On Friday afternoon, one of the freezer units at our Pasadena location broke down completely. I spent most of the day working with a team of technicians, diagnosing a series of mechanical and electrical issues that left the entire crew exhausted. My business for the past 10 years has been a chain of 3 supermarkets that I founded in the eastern part of Los Angeles County. On this Friday evening, I pulled into the garage of our Alhambra home and parked, leaning back in my seat for a minute. I was tired and just wanted the day to end. Owning supermarkets that serve the diverse communities of LA has always been exhausting. On the home front, I was disappointed because my wife Jennifer, with whom I had lived for over 15 years, had not been very kind to me lately. I'm a sensitive guy. It's a woman's attention and care that energizes me. However, recently Jennifer has become withdrawn and moody. She loves quality time and appreciates when I give her my attention. I try to do this regularly, but it's difficult when your wife pushes you away and you also have to manage 3 grocery stores. Let me introduce myself. I'm Michael Davis, 42 years old. Jennifer and I have 2 daughters. Our eldest, Sophie, is an 18-year-old physical version of her mother when she was younger. She is smart, stubborn, and knows what she wants. She's in her 3rd year at UCLA studying business management and wants to work with me on expanding our supermarket operations when she graduates. I'm sure you're thinking, how is she 18 and already in her 3rd year of university? Well, she's incredibly smart. You might also notice that I mentioned Jennifer and I have been married for only 15 years, which is thanks to our 2nd daughter, Emma. We were happy without marriage, but got married when we found out we were pregnant with Emma. Emma is our free-spirited baby, for lack of a better term. She goes with the flow, doesn't have strong opinions on many issues, and usually takes the path of least resistance. She is as smart as her sister, but prefers not to use her mind too much. At 15, she's a social butterfly, spending most of her time with friends or glued to her phone chatting on TikTok. Both of our girls were away for the weekend. Emma was visiting friends in Manhattan Beach, and Sophie was out with her boyfriend Tyler in Santa Monica. I expected them both to return home on Sunday afternoon, leaving Jennifer and me at home alone. I sat thinking about the past week and slowly began to put work out of my mind. Once the girls were gone, perhaps Jennifer and I could work through some of our recent problems with a couple of drinks and some honesty. I climbed out of my Honda Pilot, a 3-year-old SUV that handled LA traffic well, grabbed my laptop bag, and walked into the kitchen. Jennifer wasn't around, so I poured myself a Diet Coke and added a splash of cranberry juice, my favorite drink, and turned on some smooth jazz. As I sat, I stared at the beige walls trying to forget about the day. The broken freezer was sort of fixed and running, but it cost us at least $12,000 in lost merchandise and potential revenue, and there would be more expenses if we didn't get proper repairs next week. This was a significant hit to our quarterly profits in the competitive LA supermarket scene. I heard movement and the click of heels, which pulled me from my internal dialogue. My wife Jennifer walked into the room, and my breath caught. Jennifer is about 3 months older than me and has always been an incredible woman in my eyes. After having 2 children and being in her 40s, she had put on a little weight, but she went to the gym regularly and ate right most of the time, so she kept her curves in the right places. Jennifer was my everything. She was dressed up and ready to go out. Her brown hair was styled back, and her makeup was perfectly applied. Her designer purse looked almost heavy as she placed it on the granite countertop, looking at me. "You look good, my love," she said and smiled. I sighed, taking a sip of my drink. "Sorry, Jen, it's been a hard day, and I just don't have the energy to go out to dinner today," I said apologetically. Looking her up and down, she smiled at me again, but this time there was no warmth in her eyes. Something inside me shifted, and my day went from unpleasant to downright terrible. "It's okay, Mike," she said in a slightly shaky tone. "I didn't plan for you to come with me." I looked at her. In all our years together, we had rarely gone out anywhere apart. Even when she occasionally spent an evening with her girlfriends, she never dressed as if it was a date. "You didn't plan?" "I didn't plan," I asked questioningly. I took a long sip of my drink. "Then why are you dressed like we're going on a fancy date?" For a moment, Jennifer looked unsure of herself. "Michael," she said, looking at herself. Are you leaving me? Jennifer was taken aback. No, of course not, Mike. She tried to extend her hand, but I pulled away and laughed bitterly. Now you're going to tell me that this has nothing to do with us, that this is something you have to do for yourself. You're going to tell me that you deserve this after raising 2 children and dedicating yourself to our family. I raised an eyebrow, looking at my quickly deflating wife. I glanced at her expensive leather handbag on the table. Judging by your bag, you weren't planning on coming home tonight. So it's great to see that after all these years, you're so casually giving up on our marriage without thinking about what it would do to us. I threw these words at her, my voice taking on an accusatory, argumentative tone. Mike, she stopped and looked at me. This time I didn't interrupt her. She sighed and spoke quietly. We both work so hard, and I know what you do for us, but I will only be dating Brandon for a while. Brandon? As in Brandon Shaw, the supplier from Pacific Foods Distribution. I asked incredulously. Brandon Shaw is married and has 3 kids under 10. The fact that her lover was Brandon Shaw took me by surprise. Yes, Mike. Brandon, she sighed again. He's been so good to me these last few months since you weren't here. I exploded. What? I shouted, surprised by my own outburst of anger. What did you just say? You rationalize your way into having an affair. Of course we work hard, but to say that I wasn't here is complete nonsense, and you know it. You're the one pulling away from me. I've been trying to be with you for months now, but you treat me coldly. At least now I know why. Are you kidding me? I suddenly stood up, my chair scraping on the tile floor. Michael, I'm not making fun of you, she muttered. Tonight? I mean, this weekend was supposed to be our first time, she said shyly. Okay, so you're becoming an even bigger cheater, not just for one night, but for the whole weekend? I glared at her. I'm not cheating on you, she said, as I stared at her for a moment, then turned and headed to the kitchen for another drink. I was very tired after work, but I needed another Diet Coke and cranberry. I was pouring a double portion when Jennifer came and stood in the kitchen doorway. She was angry, and for the first time, she was not ashamed of her feelings. Michael, I am not a cheater and never have been. But unlike you and your first love, Sarah, I have never been with another man in my entire life. Brandon tells me I'm not cheating on you because I'm telling you it's happening. It would be a lie if I hid it. It's low, Jen, to drag Sarah into this. It's a low blow, and you know it. I almost growled at her. At least she had the decency to look away. And you were deeply mistaken, dear wife. It is betrayal if I do not accept this, and I do not accept the fact that you bring another man into our life. I assume your new man is having the same conversation with his wife. I asked, she muttered, I don't know. She was now looking down at her designer shoes. I snorted as I topped up the double cranberry with some Diet Coke, then turned to look at Jennifer. Her face was a mask of emotion. Most likely he is lying to her with all his might, saying he must be away on business and will be unavailable. I changed my tactics. Has he already kissed you? What? Jennifer asked. It's a simple question. Has Brandon Shaw kissed you? I saw her nod. Well, that says it all, doesn't it? I tried to control my anger. My wife had stopped paying attention to me, rejected my attempts to be close to her, while she was communicating more and more with another man. So I guess that's it. We're done, I said, walking out onto the back patio and slamming the sliding door so hard the whole house shook. I sat down on one of our wrought iron chairs at the outdoor dining table, fuming. It was a rough day at the store. I wanted to come home to be with my wife, and now she was telling me she was betraying me. It must have been about 5 minutes before Jennifer appeared at the door. She tried a softer approach. Mike, I really love you, but I need to do this. I've just felt so stuck over the last year. Brandon was so understanding. It won't last long, you'll see. I continued to look out into our xeriscaped yard without looking at her. No, Jennifer, you don't understand. It would be better if you had just left me. I was supposed to be your best friend, your partner, but you give yourself to another man and deprive me of the opportunity to be with you. So now I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you again. She didn't move. Michael, she said quietly and firmly, but with a hint of trepidation, you can't leave. Brandon tells me that if you try to divorce me, I will take everything from you. I can take half of your business, get the house, the children, and then it will be easy to turn them against you." Her voice became stronger as she stepped forward, placing her hand on my shoulder. I turned and looked at her, disgusted at the sight of her. I withdrew my shoulder from her touch. "Would you do this to someone you just confessed your love to? You cheated on me, threatened me, and then you believe you can get away with it?" "I wouldn't want that, but Brandon said that in court I will always come out on top. You don't have much choice. I'm sure I'll get this out of my system and get back to you. You'll be fine. You're stronger than me." For the second time that evening, I suddenly stood up, but this time I turned around, looking with hatred at the woman whom at that moment I still loved for some reason. Yet the hatred and anger I felt did not give me peace. "You are a selfish, unfaithful cheater," I hissed. She took a step back. "You dare to confess your love to me thinking that after this moment, I will have any intention of remaining married to you? So you're telling me I have no choice? Well, screw you, Jennifer. You've shown me that I have no idea who the hell you are. You are not the woman I married. It's as if something alien has taken over you. The woman I loved would never have said she would destroy me by using my children against me. So who the hell are you?" "Mike, She trailed off that I let my anger pass as suddenly as it had come, taking a rational route for a moment to see if I could talk some sense into her. "Jen, please. If you love me as much as you say, then stop this right now. I don't know if we can save our marriage after what you've just told me, that you were intimate with another man. Even if you didn't sleep with him, if you call it off now and we go to counseling, I promise I will try to understand what you've been through. I will try to forgive you for your betrayal." "My betrayal?" she whispered. I nodded. "Yes, Jennifer, betrayal. You may not see it right now, but our marriage is in a deadly situation because of what you've just stated. So cancel this thing and let's do an emergency consultation. I'll call Sarah right now, and we can get her here tonight to help us." Jennifer had thrown words at me about Sarah a little earlier. She was right that Sarah was my first love, but it wasn't meant to be as we ended up in different cities, falling in love with different people. However, Sarah and her husband David became very close friends of ours. I never thought Jennifer would use Sarah and my story against me in an argument until tonight. Sarah was also a therapist, and David became one of my closest friends over the years. We complemented each other. Of course, it helped that we looked at the world with the same views on everything, from religion and politics to relationships and infidelity. It also helped that our children grew up together. Tyler, Sarah and David's son, and Sophie had been dating as a couple since middle school. I knew that in a few years their relationship would continue to develop, given the right nurturing environment. "No, Mike, I don't want Sarah to be the center of this," she said defiantly. She sighed. "Listen, Mike, I understand how angry you are. You may think I don't understand, but I do." I went to correct her, but she raised her hand. "Let me finish. You think I don't love you, but that's not true. You're right that these threats were wrong. I shouldn't have made them. However, this does not make them any less true." I looked at the woman standing in front of me, wondering if some alien parasite had infected her brain and was multiplying. "I'll make a deal with you," she continued. "I know I hurt you, but Michael, I'm going with Brandon this weekend. I'll see a psychologist when Brandon and I are done. It may take a while, but if you feel counseling is so important to us, then we'll go when Brandon and I get tired of each other." "What about the girls?" I asked. "What about them?" Jennifer asked. "How are we going to tell them that we're separating?" I said in a calm voice. "Michael, we're not." She suddenly stopped, sighing. "We are not separating. I already told you that. Sooner or later, Brandon and I will go our separate ways. I'll come back. The girls will not be harmed." I looked at her again. "How about me? While you're having fun with Brandon, how about me? Where's the love for me?" "What do you mean?" Jennifer hesitated again. "Jennifer, I'm a sensitive guy. You pulled away from me. We haven't been intimate for over 8 weeks. You haven't even kissed me in over 2 weeks. I don't feel any love at all right now. So what should I do?" She looked at me as if the thought had never occurred to her. She didn't realize that I might need some attention and care. "I don't know." She looked down. "Brandon says that for now I should belong only to him." I exploded again, my emotions rising in frustration, rage, and sadness. "Wait, so that's it? You will do this and not care about your husband? Michael, This is not fair. I almost screamed, but she interrupted me. Are you going to say that denying you your wife while cheating on your own husband and denying your body is fair? Jennifer took another step back. I picked up my glass, drained it, and threw it at the concrete wall near our barbecue grill. It shattered, and I found my soul shattered along with it. I sank back into the chair, my shoulders slumped, and I felt hot tears running down my cheeks. Neither of us said anything for several minutes until a loud car horn sounded from our driveway. I looked at Jennifer, noticing for the first time the hesitation on her face. I turned to look at the table, feeling like an empty shell. Just go away, I whispered. I don't know if she heard me or not, but when I turned around, my wife was no longer there. I think I didn't move for about half an hour. The confrontation with Jennifer devastated me more than I could have imagined. However, my phone, which was in my pocket, brought me to my senses. My daughter Sophie called, saying she had forgotten her overnight bag for the weekend and that she and Tyler were on their way to our house to pick it up. Sorry, Dad. Mom's phone went to voicemail twice, so I thought I'd call you. She told me happily, chatting about the trip she and Tyler were taking to Newport Beach this weekend. I sniffled, trying to pull myself together. It's okay, honey. Your mom isn't home right now, but your bag will be ready by the door so you can grab it and go without wasting time. She didn't answer right away. Dad, she paused. Yes, dear. I tried to speak normally. She didn't buy it. Dad, who is Brandon? Sophie asked, a note of concern in her voice. Sorry, I meant Tyler. Sorry, Sophie, I meant Tyler. I stammered, unable to believe I made such a mistake. I tried to backtrack, but Sophie was a smart girl and I was caught. What's happening? She asked. When I didn't answer, she continued. Dad, you're worrying me. It's okay, Sophie. I just didn't have a good day. First, I had some problems at work. Then your mother and I had a disagreement. I'm just emotional, I answered. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to tell the whole story to my 18-year-old daughter. Dad, stop dodging the truth. You're trying to confuse me. What did Mom do? Her tone was accusatory that I tried to brush her off. It doesn't matter, honey. I'll be fine. You just caught me off guard. I'll get your bag ready for you. Don't let our troubles ruin your weekend. Love you, Sophie. I quickly hung up, feeling like a jerk for trying to hide the truth from my daughter. I walked into the house, splashed some water on my face, then took Sophie's bag from her room, placing it right outside the garage door where she knew I would put it so she could grab it and go. This wasn't the first time one of my girls had forgotten something. I picked up a broom and started cleaning up the shards of glass when Sophie came rushing through the back door and towards me. Are you okay, Dad? She asked, looking at me with a worried expression on her face. This was the look Jennifer used to give me when she was concerned, but it was a look I hadn't seen from her that evening as she told me about her plans to be with another man. I shrugged, trying to wave her off as I went back to sweeping up the glass on the patio. Of course, honey. I put your bag in the usual place, I said monotonously. I bent down and began sweeping the glass into a dustpan. When I stood up, Tyler was also standing in the doorway, frowning. I couldn't fool anyone that I pulled out a chair and sat down. Sophie pulled out a chair and sat across from me, grabbing both of my hands and squeezing them. Dad, you're not okay. Mom called me shortly after I talked to you. I could hear she was in a car, and it sounded like someone else was with her. So what's going on? I looked at my daughter, realizing she saw something broken in my eyes. Their shine had disappeared. Damn, my daughter almost screamed. What's the matter? Tyler asked, sensing that his girlfriend was upset. He looked at me, but I still didn't say anything. I felt old and depressed. My mother is cheating on my father, Sophie said, as if nothing had happened. No, really. Both Sophie and Tyler looked at me. I nodded slowly. She gave me an ultimatum and then left with her lover. Sometime before you called me, I admitted gloomily. They sat with me the rest of the night. At some point, Sarah and David arrived. Tyler showed up with takeout, a fresh bottle of Diet Coke, and some wine. I slowly told all four of them about Jennifer's betrayal, her ultimatum, and everyone was shocked. Dad? Sophie asked. Doesn't Mom remember the marriage contract you both have? When Jennifer and I got married, I was starting my own supermarket business. My parents gave me 6 figures to help with the initial capital, and their lawyers drew up a prenuptial agreement. It stated that if one party cheated, she would walk away with nothing but her clothes and 15% of the marital property, while the offended party would keep the house, cars, and children during any separation or divorce. Jennifer had no claim to the business. I don't think your mom was thinking about anything at all, honey. Remember, she told me that it wouldn't be cheating if she told me about it, I said. Sophie snorted. Dad, there's no excuse for cheating, whether she tells you or not. It sounds like she's been cheating on you emotionally for months now. Both Emma and I have noticed that something has been off between you two for a few weeks now. We just couldn't understand it. I nodded, and then it dawned on me. Oh my God, Emma. I need to talk to her. I need to let her know that everything will be okay. Sophie grabbed my hands again. Dad, please don't lie. Everything will be bad. Mom killed something in you today, and I don't know if I can forgive her for this. She's still your mom, I replied, my tone sounding more like a whine than anything else. Mother or not, there is no reason to do what she did to you, she said sharply, then squeezed my hand again, softening. Emma and I will be fine. I'll talk to her in the morning. She also knew that something was wrong. We ate, and I found myself eating 3 portions of delicious Thai food despite my mood. However, after eating and talking with Sophie, Tyler, Sarah, and David, I must admit that I felt much better. Everyone, do you mind if I talk to Michael for a bit? Sarah asked later in the evening when the conversation had moved away from Jennifer, and I felt myself pulling away a little. The other 3 took this as their cue and headed inside. Rose, facing me, sat down in the chair that Sophie had vacated. I think she noticed the look on my face, then looked over her shoulder at the back door where the others had gone, and then back at me, smiling. You have an amazing daughter, Michael, Sarah said. I nodded, looking at her. Sarah was a beautiful red-haired woman. As I mentioned earlier, she was my first love. We dated for several years in high school until we went to different colleges. She then fell in love with David, and shortly after that, I met Jennifer. Until tonight, I was head over heels in love with my wife. The fact that Sarah and I had dated before never bothered Jennifer or David. It was history and never interfered with anything. Sarah and I were close, despite or because of our history, but neither of us would ever consider betraying our spouses. Having our kids date strengthened our family cohesion. Sophie and Tyler knew a little about Sarah and me dating when we were younger. None of us hid this. We also knew that now that they were both 18, Sophie and Tyler were sleeping together, but we knew how much they cared for each other, so we didn't stand in their way. Sarah patted my leg, bringing me back to the present moment. How are you, Mike? Don't lie to me. I know you almost better than anyone else. I shook my head. I don't know, Sarah. I mean, I knew we had problems, but this... I gestured into the air, then more calmly. I still love her, Sarah. I hate what she did to me, to us. I hate it, and I want to scream. I want to cry. I want to hurt her and her boyfriend, but right now I still love her, I said hysterically. Sarah nodded, now in full psychiatrist mode. How do you think you'll cope with this, Mike? She asked that I looked at her for a moment. Sarah, stop this stupid psychiatric talk, I said, smiling sadly. It doesn't work on me. Besides, I've known you too long. She smiled back, bringing me out of my thoughts. But what can I do? Well, at least a breakup is at most a divorce, subject to a full prenuptial agreement, I said. I begged her to stay. I told her we could get some counseling, to which I received threats that she would take everything from me and turn my girls against me. Sarah nodded. Mike, you're right, and I think you know that I can't be your advisor on this. I'm too close to both of you. So tomorrow we'll think about finding you someone to talk to. But both David and I will be there for you through it all. You know David, and I think very highly of you. I'm sure David is now trying to dissuade your daughter from wanting to destroy her mother. I don't think I've seen Tyler this mad since Chloe Martinez asked Tyler to the junior school dance, she laughed. I laughed quietly in response. You're right. Thank you, Sarah. I'm sorry about this. You don't deserve to be in the middle of this. She reassured me. Don't worry, Mike. We are here for you. Believe me, if you were the one who betrayed Jennifer, then we would do the same for her. Talking about destroying, I leaned back in my chair. Sarah, I would never. Sarah smiled at me. Relax, Mike. I know you wouldn't do this. That's why I felt free to say it. You and David are two of the most loyal people I've ever met. And if you two were any more alike, I'd think you were brothers. David was relatively short, just over 5 feet 10 inches, but stocky and muscular with blonde hair and blue eyes. As for me, I have brown hair. Thanks to my job managing supermarkets and the physical demands, I'm tall and fit, but still not in David's league. I think that's why I fell in love with him. His personality reminded me of you, she said thoughtfully, momentarily lost in memories that we both laughed. It was an old conversation that had long since ceased to be awkward, proving that Sarah and I had a deep friendship. For the next hour, we discussed my feelings, mostly sadness and betrayal mixed with rage and a feeling of numbness that I couldn't explain, but Sarah understood that we later walked inside to find Tyler and Sophie cozy on the couch. David sat in one of the lounge chairs watching a movie. "Hello, everyone," I said in greeting. Sophie was immediately next to me, hugging me. "Are you okay, Daddy?" she asked worriedly. I looked at Sarah, and she smiled. "No, honey, that's not true, but I'm so glad you're all here." "It would be much worse if you weren't," I replied. She hugged me. "Dad, Tyler and I are going to stay here for the night. We don't want you to be alone." "But Sophie, what about your weekend?" I asked. Tyler dismissed my concerns. "Michael, I can tell you that there is no other place Sophie and I would rather be right now. We can do the weekend anytime. I already canceled the reservation while you were talking to Sarah, so we can reschedule the trip soon." But Sophie was right. "In light of what happened, I think you need us here," Tyler said. I couldn't argue, and after that, we parted ways for the evening. Sarah and David said goodbye, promising to bring breakfast in the morning. I said goodnight to Sophie and Tyler, mentioning that I'd take a shower and read a little in bed to take my mind off things. "We'll bring you coffee in the morning, Dad," Sophie said. "I know I won't sleep well tonight, so I can only imagine how you're going to sleep." I smiled sadly at her, thanked her, hugged her again, kissed her forehead, and went to my room. I took a shower, finally took off my work clothes, and returned to the bedroom with a sigh. The room was filled with reminders of Jennifer. To top it all off, she had left a few things on the bed that she hadn't put away when she got ready for the weekend without me. I tossed them on the floor or into the closet, with the intention of packing them into boxes with the rest of her things tomorrow. I was lying in bed with my iPad, reading one of the latest books in the Wheel of Time series, a fantasy series I've been following for years, when my phone chirped. For a moment, I thought it might be Jennifer, but it was David letting me know they were home and thinking about me. I thanked them with a thumbs up. He replied that they would be with us around 9 o'clock in the morning. I was about to put my phone down when a thought occurred to me. I opened the Find My iPhone app and sent a request to Jennifer's phone. It pinpointed a location a couple of hours' drive from here, up in the San Gabriel Mountains near Wrightwood. I sighed and took a screenshot of the request for my records to prove she was lying to me. This made me think about our security system. We had an ADT security system that recorded audio and video from cameras installed throughout the house, leading to a hard drive in the closet. We had 8 cameras located throughout the house. The ones in the yard were set up to send Jennifer and me an email if they detected movement. However, all cameras recorded all the time until the hard drive was full, and then the cameras began to overwrite earlier content. The disk itself contained up to a week's worth of footage for all 8 cameras. I logged in, checked the backyard camera from earlier that evening, and sure enough, the camera had captured Jennifer and me discussing her infidelity as I walked out into the yard. I also checked the live feed and saw a big guy step out of a brand new BMW, greet Jennifer with a kiss, and then drive off. Now I had an ironclad confession and a video of her leaving me to be with Brandon, proving that she was not at my location. I pulled out my laptop, logged into the ADT security system, and exported the video via email, along with instructions to begin the divorce process. As I was struggling with the wording from my lawyer and had just attached the video to an email, my phone rang. It was Jennifer. She must have still been awake and heard the tone from Find My iPhone. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, I received a voicemail notification that I played it. "Michael, Brandon and I heard your phone ring. We're telling you not to do anything stupid. Sooner or later, we'll finish, and we can talk then. You can do everything my way. If you do anything differently, then I'm telling you Brandon will destroy you, and I will take everything from you." I heard Jennifer say this, along with Brandon giggling in the background. "Yes, little boy, trust me, this won't last forever. However, if you say anything to anyone, I will have a personal interest in picking you apart until you lose everything. Your wife, your kids, your businesses, and let's not forget any respect you ever thought you had. When Jennifer and I are finished, she will return to you. Just play ball, and everything will be fine. Now Jennifer and I need to get back to making love." As they disconnected, I heard them both laughing. For a moment, I sat stunned. I've heard a lot of rude things over the years, but this guy's disrespect and outright arrogance triggered something in me. I decided it was time for their destruction rather than my own. I finalized the email by noting that not only did I want the divorce papers served on Jennifer at her work as soon as possible, but I also wanted to file a lawsuit against Brandon. My search revealed that there is no alienation of affection law in California, but I wanted my lawyer to do something about it. I wanted them to hurt. I also wanted Jennifer and Brandon's company to be sued for loss of income in my own business due to the fact that they either encouraged the affair or were unaware of the misconduct, which caused me mental distress and my business to suffer as a result. I knew that the lawsuits would most likely come to nothing. However, simply suing all parties, in addition to the divorce and enforcing the prenuptial agreement, would do great damage to the arrogance of this couple. When I hit send, I knew I didn't have the details on Brandon's wife yet, but if I could find them, I would contact her to let her know what a cheater her husband was. I wish I could say that after I sent the email, I slept well knowing I was taking action against cheaters, but that would be a lie. I tossed and turned until the sun came up, and I even heard Sophie and Tyler get up before I finally closed my eyes. I listened and realized that Tyler was heading to his car to get the promised coffee. I put on my pants and shirt and headed to the kitchen. When I entered the room, Sophie saw me and hugged me tightly, asking if I had slept. I shook my head. "Me neither," she replied. "I tried, but I just couldn't. I just don't understand how Mom could do this to you," she complained. "I mean, all of us, not just you." We talked for a while about her university education, trying to avoid the topic until Tyler returned with 3 very welcome large cups of coffee. I sipped the magnificent drink. I've always loved cappuccino, and the chocolate on top just enhanced the flavor as it danced across my taste buds. Sophie and I sighed in unison, and Tyler laughed. "You're both exactly the same," he said, then became serious. "So you weren't sleeping either, huh?" "No. Actually, I was very busy emailing with my company's lawyer. When I received a voicemail from Jennifer, I explained. After making a Find My iPhone request, I spent the next 10 minutes explaining how I had put together a package of documents to begin the process of divorcing Jennifer and suing Brandon and his workplace. Listening to the voicemail Jennifer and Brandon had left me, I saw Sophie try to hold back her tears. "This woman is not my mother," she said quietly, wiping her eyes with a coffee napkin. "My mother would never be so cold as to insult my father or allow another man to humiliate her husband like that." Tyler and I wholeheartedly agreed. It was around 10 o'clock in the morning when we began to wonder where Sarah and David were. They had told us they would bring breakfast around 9 o'clock, so an hour later we were worried. Tyler tried calling his mother first, and then his father. When he couldn't get through, I tried calling them too. I called David's cell, then their home in Manhattan Beach, and finally the breakfast cafe we always went to, Joe's Diner on Fair Oaks. The owner of the cafe, Julia, an elderly Latinx woman in her 60s whom we all knew well, confirmed that Sarah and David had had breakfast at her place around 8:30 on their way to my place. When I hung up the phone, I started to get really worried. I was grabbing my keys so we could go find them when Tyler's phone rang. That he picked it up, and a minute later he was lying on the floor with a pale face. I took the phone from him. "Hello, this is Michael. I'm the father of Tyler's girlfriend." "Who am I speaking to?" I asked. "Mr. Davis, this is LAPD Officer Karen Shin. I have sad news. I need to inform Tyler that his parents were in a serious accident," the officer said. I sucked in a sharp breath, looking at Tyler who was lying almost comatose on the ground. Sophie hugged him with one arm, looking up at me desperately. "Are Sarah and David all right, officer?" I asked. There was a pause. "Mr. Davis, I take it that Tyler can't speak right now?" the officer asked. I confirmed this. "Can you get Tyler to give me verbal consent so that I can discuss this matter with you?" she asked, and I managed to get Tyler to say yes. The officer paused, catching her breath. This morning at about 8:45, an uncontrollable 18-wheeler with failed brakes crashed into their car on the driver's side on the I-210 near Pasadena. As a result of the accident, their car was practically destroyed. I'm sorry to say that Mrs. Thompson is currently in surgery. Unfortunately, Mr. Thompson is no longer with us. It felt like my world had turned pale. I sank to the floor just like Tyler. David was dead, and Sarah was in surgery. I cleared my throat. "Which hospital?" I asked hoarsely. "They are both at the Huntington Hospital in Pasadena." "May I assume that you and Tyler will be there soon?" she asked. I heard a note of sadness in her voice. She was a professional, but I could tell this officer was struggling with her emotions. "Yes," I croaked. I learned the details about where to go and what to say when we arrived. 5 minutes later, the three of us were out the door. I stuck to the speed limit, even though I wanted to drive like crazy. Half an hour later, we were in the trauma department of the hospital. The nurses did their best to calm us down. We repeatedly asked questions such as, "How is Sarah doing? Where is David's body? Will Sarah survive? And what about the other driver?" Officer Chen entered and introduced herself. We talked for the next 20 minutes. Once again, Tyler allowed me to act as his representative. She told me that David had died on impact due to multiple injuries. "Accidents like this are terrible," she said. Sarah was also in critical condition. The rest of the day passed in a fog of conversations and calls. I have to give Tyler credit. After the initial shock, he sat with me all day while we waited for news about Sarah and began calling people. We called his grandparents first, then David's brother in San Diego, and then we called Sarah's sister in Phoenix. When the people from the funeral home arrived, Sophie and I had to help Tyler fill out forms regarding the death of his father. Sophie called Emma, and an hour later she was at the hospital, hugging Tyler and crying with Sophie. After a while, she looked at us and asked innocently, "Where's Mom?" Sophie and I exchanged glances. "She won't come," Sophie said bitterly. Emma looked at Sophie and then at me. "I take it this is because of Brandon?" my youngest daughter asked gloomily. Sophie and I were shocked. When everything that could possibly go wrong did go wrong, it felt overwhelming. "Emma, are you saying that you know something about your mother and Brandon?" I asked quietly. Emma nodded seriously, tears streaming down her face. "I saw Mom buying new sexy lingerie a couple of weeks ago at Victoria's Secret in the Galleria. I asked if she bought it for you, Dad. She got mad at me and then blurted out that it was for a date with some guy named Brandon, telling me there was no way in hell you'd ever see that underwear." "Emma, why didn't you say anything?" Sophie's tone was accusatory. If my youngest daughter's posture could have been any lower, she would have become a puddle on the ground. "I don't know," Emma said, looking at Sophie. "We talked about how Mom and Dad have been distant lately. I didn't know what to do, so I tried to stay away from home as much as possible. Once I found out what I didn't want to know, I didn't want to look my mother in the eye." She looked at me. "Forgive me, Dad." I pulled her into my arms. "It's okay, baby. I sure wish you would have told me something. I didn't know anything until last night, but it's okay." She started crying. "I'm so sorry, Dad. If I had said something, maybe Aunt Sarah and Uncle David." She never finished her thought and seemed to break down further. We left late in the evening just to shower and change clothes. I dropped Sophie and Emma off at home, and then we sorted things out. Sophie drove back to the hospital with Emma, and I followed. I think it was around 4 o'clock on Sunday morning when Sarah was brought out of the operating room. Sarah would be in the ICU for at least a few days. They wanted her to wake up so they could make sure she had no brain damage before taking the next steps. Even in his grief, Tyler was kind to the doctors and asked to meet the surgical team who worked for hours to save his mother's life. I had never been more proud of my daughter's boyfriend and truly hoped that one day I could call him my son-in-law. We spent the rest of the day in the hospital. I grabbed my laptop and phone chargers from home. Once online, I received confirmation that the documents had been completed and were ready to be served to Jennifer, Brandon, and their firm on Monday morning. I was glad that I had a damn good lawyer, better than Brandon, who I had previously relied on for some business contracts. I also contacted my duty managers at work, making sure they would take over the workload for the week due to the family tragedy and that I needed some time off. I didn't tell them that I had more than one emergency, but they knew their stuff and kept working. One piece of good news was that over the course of Saturday, one of my support staff managed to fix the remaining issues on the freezer unit that had broken down on Friday. That same day, we began working with Tyler to plan David's funeral. Tyler sent a message to their family lawyer to receive instructions. It wouldn't have been necessary if Sarah had pulled through, but Tyler wanted to be prepared for anything. We talked about the funeral for several hours. Later in the afternoon, we were joined by Margaret, Sarah's mother, an older woman in her early 70s, but as perceptive as ever. She hugged her grandson and then hugged me tightly. Margaret always treated me like a son. She loved David, but always spoke in a joking tone about me as the one who got away from her daughter. She told us that Patricia, David's mom, would be coming later in the week as soon as she could find someone to drive her from the assisted living facility in Pasadena, since she couldn't drive anymore. We talked easily all day. Margaret sat with us in the hospital waiting room. As planned, I wondered if the staff would move us out of there, but when I asked the nurse if we needed to move, she shook her head. No, this unfortunately happens more often than you might expect, but if it's not too busy, then you can stay. We know what grief you're all going through right now. I know that you need to be closer to Mrs. Thompson while you wait for her to wake up, she said. That I smiled at her answer, thanking her. Time flew by as we all talked and reminisced. Jennifer was only mentioned in passing, and after Sophie had brought Margaret up to speed with Jennifer, a dark, scowling expression appeared on her face whenever she was not being observed. It was about 8 o'clock on Sunday evening when I answered a call on my cell phone without looking. Our phones had been ringing all day as news of David's death and Sarah's injuries spread. Hey, this is Michael, I said, watching as Tyler hugged Sophie, smiling as I observed the two young lovers looking into each other's eyes. I saw the exchange of loving glances between them. They were falling more and more in love with each other. This is not the best way to protect your wife. I heard Jennifer scolding me on the phone. I told you not to make waves, otherwise you'll regret it. Brandon is fierce and will destroy you if you say anything to anyone. Where the hell are you, Michael? You should have been home when I got back. She continued. That I don't know what happened to Jennifer over the weekend, but if there was any uncertainty or regret left from Friday night, it was eliminated by the obstinate woman now speaking to me on the phone. Jennifer, I said, contempt dripping from my voice. All conversations around me stopped, and everyone looked at me. Yes, it's me, you great fool. Where are you? And where are the girls? If you tell them anything, I told you I'll turn them against you. So you better come home now, or I'll make you regret it. I stopped mid-sentence. I wasn't interested in her threats. Tomorrow, Jennifer would learn that her neatly constructed story had fallen apart. The cheater had just returned home. I don't even know why you answered the call, Emma said quietly. We did, Sophie said softly. Today I spent several hours talking one-on-one with my youngest daughter. She apologized repeatedly for not telling me, but once she heard the full extent of the deception from her mother, she became almost as angry with her as Sophie was. Dad, if you divorce, I will live with you, okay? Emma suddenly told me. Of course, baby. Of course, I replied, hugging her. Returning to the present, I looked at Emma. It was instinct. I answered the call without hesitation. It just took me a while to get my bearings. The next moment, my phone rang again. Jennifer, of course. Over the next 10 minutes, she tried calling a dozen times. Then she tried to call the girls. After half an hour, Sophie got tired of it. What? She shouted into the phone, picking up the receiver. Jennifer chastised our eldest daughter for her tone. Mom, stop it. I have absolutely no interest in talking to such a lying traitor right now. I'm here with my family, including my sister and father. We are in mourning, and we don't need you to add to our grief. I heard Jennifer scream into the phone, hurling curses that I never knew she could say, let alone say to her daughter. She seemed to think Sophie was talking to her about the breakdown of the relationship between me and Jennifer, rather than about David's and Sarah's situation, whose life hung in the balance. I realized that Jennifer had no idea what had happened. Jennifer continued to yell for another moment before Sophie interrupted her. "Mom, I'm not going to let you yell at me anymore. And before you start, yes, Dad told us everything too. So know that I have no interest in living in the same house as you. You had a man who loved you just as much as your children and adored you as a role model. Now you've traded your dad for a boyfriend who will most likely drop you like a hot potato, and you've lost the respect of both of your daughters." She paused, obviously waiting for her mother's response. "Yes, both Emma and me. Yes, Emma told us what she knew. My dad is amazing because he forgave her, and right now she hates you as much as Dad and I do. So pack your bags, Mom, because none of us want you there when we get home." She stopped again, listening. "No, Mom, I won't tell you where we are or when we'll return home. Why don't you call Brandon and go to his house?" She made a mock pause. "What? You can't because he went home to his wife who has no idea that he's a sneaky cheating freak who helped you destroy any respect your family has for you." "Too bad, Mom." Jennifer began to answer, but Sophie cut her off. "Sorry, Mom, I think we're being called. I'll talk to you later." She then turned off the phone, looked at us all staring at her, and pointed to her phone in her hand. "Wrong number," Sophie said simply. Despite the gravity of the situation, everyone chuckled, even the nurses at the station across from us. Margaret went home for the night, promising she would return early in the morning. Meanwhile, Emma and I prepared to leave for a few hours. Sophie and Tyler remained in the hospital. Later, Emma and I returned around midnight, switched places, and let Sophie and Tyler get some sleep. Emma and I were putting our gear back into our bags when the trauma nurse arrived. "She woke up," the nurse said excitedly. We all smiled and let out a nervous laugh. We then asked about Sarah's condition. "She is currently being examined by a doctor. She's really out of it, but since she's awake, you'll all be able to see her for a little while." For the next hour, we gathered around to see Sarah, or what we could see of her. "Hey there," I said, using my nickname for Sarah. When we first met in high school, I called her my Sarah Bear because of her red hair and fierce hugs. If anyone other than me ever called her that, they'd always get a playful punch from her. "You gave us a real scare, but it's good to see that you're on the mend." She could not yet speak with the breathing tube in her throat. Of course, she was also still heavily sedated, likely from some powerful pain medications, but there was a question in her eyes that I didn't want to answer. I shook my head, and she understood. A single tear rolled out of her left eye, quickly soaking into the bandages. For the rest of my visit, I was unable to touch her. I sat with her quietly, talking about how proud I was of her, how she was my family, and how we were all going to be better people together. I was exhausted when I left the room, and the nurse handed me a tissue. I cried, but I didn't even realize it. I thanked her and returned to the waiting room. Half an hour later, Emma and I hugged Sophie and Tyler and headed home. Emma and I were dead tired. We had only about 3 hours of sleep before heading back to the hospital to let Sophie and Tyler rest. Although now that Sarah was awake, we all felt some relief. We smiled as we drove, talking about the dream and how happy we were that Sarah was awake. But then we both frowned as we pulled into our street. There was an unfamiliar BMW X5 parked in our driveway. Damn, we both cursed at the same time. I saw that the headlights were on, so I drove past, turned around, and pulled over to the side of the road in front of our house. We saw the curtains move, but not a single door opened. Should we go in, or should we just leave? Emma asked me. I shrugged, then sighed. We need to go in. Sorry, honey, but I'm not sure it would be safe for me to drive today without rest or caffeine. So I suggest we enter. You head to your room, close the door, and try to ignore what I'm sure will be a bad conversation. Are you sure, Dad? Can I stay with you? I smiled. Emma hated confrontation, which was one of the reasons she hadn't told me. But the fact that she was willing to confront her mother with me showed how upset my 15-year-old daughter was with her. I pulled out my phone and pressed record. Emma looked at me and did the same with her phone. We both got out of the car and walked down the path to the front door. It was unlocked, and we entered. Not even 2 seconds after we crossed the threshold, Brandon's voice rang out. Good man, Michael, here he is, the little cuckold himself. Come back to apologize and play nice before I ruin your life, he said coldly, with the arrogance of a man who got what he wanted despite any objections. Emma entered the room, causing Brandon to stop abruptly. Jennifer hesitated for a moment. If you don't mind, Dad, I'm too tired for this. I'll go to bed and make sure you're up by noon so we can go back, she said. She walked past the stunned Brandon and Jennifer, saying only a few insulting words to both of them before shutting her door. As soon as Emma's door closed, they attacked me again. I told you not to tell your daughter anything, you idiot, Jennifer said. You told me not to tell your daughter anything, you idiot, Brandon said, glaring at me. I picked up my phone. I'm letting you know that I'm recording this conversation. The recording has been going on since we walked through the door and will continue until you leave, I said, looking at both of them. Jennifer turned pale as she looked at the phone in my hand, and Brandon shrugged. It doesn't matter, Brandon said with a smile. Brandon was an impressive man, taller and broader than me. However, most of his body was fat rather than muscle. He was also balding and had a double chin. I'd say he was in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. To be honest, I struggled to understand why Jennifer would get involved with someone like him. I ignored Brandon for a moment and looked straight at my wife. Jennifer, I asked you not to be here when I returned home tonight, and in return, you insult me even more by bringing your lover here. Is there really no depth to your depravity? Michael, Jennifer began, but Brandon interrupted her. He took 2 steps forward until he was in front of my face. You listen here. We both told you how it would be and told you not to say anything. Now I'm going to make your life hell. He spoke loudly, not caring that a 15-year-old girl could overhear. Mr. Shaw, I said calmly, looking him in the face, you are not welcome here. I will ask you to watch your language as my minor daughter is in the other room. So what the hell, he yelled. She won't tell anyone, and neither will you. With that, he snatched the phone from my hand, threw it on the ground, and stomped on it before I could do anything. He then smiled cruelly at me and started yelling. You're just some grocery store manager who bored his wife so much that she begged me to be with her. He smiled menacingly at me as I looked at my crushed phone on the floor. Jennifer decided to join in. I had no idea what Brandon had done to her, but she was by no means my wife anymore, based on the words she spoke. Michael, it's true. Brandon is 10 times the lover you are. But you told the girls, and it's going to be very hard for you. I wish you hadn't said anything, because now Brandon and I will have to destroy you. Jennifer, what are you? I didn't have time to finish, because while I was looking at Jennifer, good old Brandon attacked me. Emma heard the crash and left her room. Honey, please could you go call 911? Tell them that your father was attacked, and I protected both of us. Could you also let them know that we have a recording of the entire incident and that we expect the police and ambulance here as soon as possible? I said. Emma, who had now escaped Jennifer's grasp, ran back to her room and slammed the door. Good girl, I muttered, then turned to Brandon. Listen here. You took my wife and came to my house thinking that I would be something that I am not. You have no idea what you've unleashed and how I'm going to ruin your pathetic life. Do you think you're a big man? I just made you my bitch. What have you done? Jennifer screamed. Michael, what the hell did you do to Brandon? I shrugged, looking at the woman who just a few months ago I would have given my life for. Today, I wouldn't even spit on her if she was on fire. It doesn't matter, Jennifer. Tonight, you and that idiot didn't even ask about me or my daughters before you both attacked me. You didn't ask Emma how she was feeling or where any of us had been. You just went along with this and his plans. She gazed at me, bending over her fallen lover. After a few moments of silence, I filled the dead air. Aren't you going to ask? Let me tell you. Because you ran off with that fat freak for the weekend, our daughter and her boyfriend came to spend time with me. She's not stupid and knew something was wrong, even when I tried to deny it. Soon Sarah and David were here too. Oh, Michael, you didn't, she whined. No, I didn't do that. Sophie and Tyler did it. They are smart, intelligent, and can read between the lines, I replied. Anyway, they came to be there for me, unlike you. Then they went home later that night, promising to bring breakfast on Saturday morning while we figured out what to do with you and your lover. I pointed my finger at Brandon, who was groaning on the floor. Anyway, I said, drawing out the words. Now I was getting to the hard part. My voice became quiet. Sarah and David were driving here with breakfast when they were hit by an out-of-control truck on the I-210 freeway near Pasadena. David is dead, and Sarah is fighting for her life in the hospital. It was all over the news, so if you and your crazy person had bothered to watch the news or even ask us, you might have found out that because of you, one of our friends is dead and the other one may not survive. I let it sink in, but after a moment, Jennifer had the nerve to scream at me. It's not my fault, Michael. We asked you not to say anything. If you had kept your mouth shut, they would still be alive. It's your fault they're dead, not mine. No, Mom, it's your fault, our daughter said, standing in the doorway. She looked at me. The police and ambulance are on their way. She looked at her mother again. I have no idea who you are, but you are not my mother. It's your fault that Uncle David died, not Dad's. If you hadn't cheated on your dad, this would never have happened. She looked at her hands. And this is also my fault. Maybe if I told Dad right away, he could have stopped it. Emma, I began to speak. No, Dad. I know I should have said something, but the blame lies with her, she said, pointing at her mother. She retreated back to her room, and Jennifer and I just stared at each other. We could now hear the emergency sirens blaring. No one said anything as 2 police cars arrived, and suddenly there was chaos everywhere. Jennifer tried to explain that I was the one who attacked Brandon. When asked if he was her husband, she stammered and explained that I was her husband, but still, I was the one who beat Brandon. I presented my version. An ambulance arrived, and Brandon was carried out on a stretcher. The ambulance left, and I think the police were close to arresting me because I was the guy who attacked someone. My wife screamed again that it was all my fault when Emma came back into the room. She said to the officer interrogating us, sorry, Mr. Officer, but I have a recording here that confirms everything my father said, including that this man said he would destroy my father and that my mother would lie to protect him. She handed the officer a USB drive. What? How? Brandon's phone broke your phone, Jennifer screamed, not realizing that the police were still in the room and could hear her. Mom, Dad had a feeling that something might happen, so when I went to my room, I placed my phone at the base of the door so I could record everything. She looked at the officer. I'm sorry to say that after listening to everything my mother said, I don't feel safe around her. Please, can you not force me to stay with her? She said she would support this man no matter what he did to Dad. I heard him hit my father, so I'm scared. Emma said, coming up to me and hugging me while simultaneously throwing daggers at her mother. After that, nothing mattered anymore. Although underage, Emma had all the evidence and made a statement against Jennifer. So my wife was arrested and taken to the police station overnight. When Jennifer was taken out, she looked at me angrily but did not say anything. After everything that happened, we didn't have time to sleep, but no matter how tired I was, we took a shower and changed clothes. Then I drank strong coffee, and we drove back to the hospital. When we entered Sarah's room, Sophie and Tyler were sitting on 2 chairs, leaning on each other. When Sophie saw my face, she gasped. What happened, Dad? She asked. When she saw it, we spent the next few minutes explaining her mother and Brandon's visit. We heard Sarah's muffled grunt and found her awake, her eyes looking at me with sadness. Sarah, I muttered. I'm sorry if I'd known you were awake. I fell silent, realizing that I was talking about David's death in her presence. Of course, she knew. I had admitted it earlier, but I still should have been more sensitive. Are you okay, Sarah? Can I get you anything? Do you need a nurse? I asked, then added. Blink once to say yes and twice to say no. She blinked twice slowly, then 3 times, pressing her whole hand to my hand. I did not move for the rest of the night. The next 2 weeks flew by very quickly. Jennifer's parents got her out of jail on bail the next day, and then called me every name they could until Sophie put them in their place. When Jennifer returned to work a few days later, she was just in time for the process server to hit her with divorce papers and to see the lawsuit filed against the owner of Pacific Foods Distribution. As a result, Jennifer found herself on unpaid leave, suspended from work pending the outcome of the case. By the end of the day, she was living in her parents' spare room. She returned to the house while Sophie and Tyler were relaxing there. They watched her like hawks as she gathered a few things and then took the walk of shame back to her parents' waiting car. Sophie hugged her grandparents, but made it clear that her mother would never be welcome in the house again. In Sophie's opinion, after Brandon's fight with me, she not only saw that her mother was shameless, but also that she was guilty because of the accident. It wasn't until the end of the first week that doctors decided to remove the breathing tube from Sarah's throat. When they did this, her first words were addressed to me. "Michael, are you okay?" I waved it off. "Sarah, how can you ask this?" She smiled sadly. "It's okay, honey. I knew about David before you told me. I hoped beyond all hope in the first moments after the accident that we were both stunned, but then we came to our senses. We confessed our love to each other. Somehow he knew that he wouldn't be able to make it, but I could." Now she was crying. "After I woke up the first time, I wasn't myself, but I remember how your eyes confirmed that he was gone." I sat down on the chair next to the bed, taking her right hand, still injured, and kissing it. "I'm like her missing left hand," she whispered to me in a conspiratorial tone, even though it was just the two of us in the room at the moment. "Last night I had a dream that David came to me. He was beautiful, unharmed, and looked fine," she smiled. "He told me that everything was okay, that his time had come, and that no one was to blame for the accident, not even Jennifer." I looked at her, and her smile faded a little. "I know, just like David, that there is no need to blame anyone. Anyway, he told me that he loves me, but now it's my job to take care of you, Michael. He truly loved you like a brother and was so upset about what happened to you." I looked at her. "Sarah, you're the one who needs to be looked after seriously. Haven't you noticed that you're missing an arm?" She laughed, lifting her stump slightly. "I'm pretty armless now, aren't I? There was nothing I could do about it." I snorted. "I guess it's my job now to help you." "You need it," I retorted. She groaned and then laughed good-naturedly. "I'm serious, Mike. I missed David terribly, but in that dream, I felt peaceful. He made me promise to look after you." I raised my hands, and she giggled. "Okay, you win. You can keep an eye on me," I said. Sarah looked satisfied. "But only after you leave here. Until then, it's my job to look after you." Like those first 2 weeks, the next few months passed slowly. If I wasn't at work, I was at the hospital with Sarah. If I wasn't at the hospital, I was packing my things at home. The girls and I decided that we would sell the house and move. There was a place near Burbank, close to both the Huntington Hospital and my stores, that I managed to find for a reasonable price, and I also got a decent deal on our current location in Alhambra. The new house was smaller but close to transport and medical care. It had 3 bedrooms plus a study nook, and if you looked out of the master bedroom window while standing on tiptoes, you could see the Hollywood Hills in the distance. My divorce from Jennifer was in full swing. The girls refused to have anything to do with her. The few calls they had with their mother ended badly for Jennifer. Emma, our easygoing daughter, became tough as nails and frowned whenever her mother was mentioned. Over the past month, Sophie had almost moved in with Tyler, which I didn't mind, even though Jennifer had already told me about it a dozen times, calling me names in between. She was not very happy living in her parents' house in the spare bedroom. Her parents called me a couple of times to see if I could reconcile, but after I played them the audio from Emma's phone from that night with Brandon and Jennifer, they apologized and stopped trying to solve our problems. While Jennifer's life was on a downward spiral, Brandon's life felt like a stone sinking to the bottom of a pond. He wanted to take legal action against me, but the police told him that he could sue me, but it would end badly for him because he was at fault for what happened. I could easily make a case for self-defense in my home and defending my family. After a week-long review, Pacific Foods Distribution immediately fired him for bringing them into disrepute. They did this to try to get me to drop my lawsuit against them. However, my lawyer negotiated a settlement with them. Brandon's wife, somehow, got hold of a copy of the recording. I swear it wasn't me, but Emma gave me sly glances several times. I had no idea how she found out, but one evening a certain Maria Shaw, who had been suspecting her husband of cheating several times, finally had hard evidence. It turned out that most of Brandon's money came from Maria's family trust, which had helped Brandon get into business school many years ago. Because it was a family trust that he was not a part of, Maria told me that he would not receive anything in the divorce. They also had children, one of whom dreamed of becoming a business manager. But Maria suspected that this might not be the case once he learned of his father's womanizing ways. Now Brandon was living in a cheap motel on Sunset Boulevard, surviving on a credit card that was nearing its limit. He wasn't having much success finding a new job in the food industry, and I sincerely hoped it would stay that way. Sarah was getting a little better every day, so that a month after the accident, she was able to leave the hospital for a few hours with a nurse so we could all say a formal goodbye to David. It was strange. We were all sad, but Sarah, of all people, smiled a lot. She laughed with the others at the stories they told, and when she cried, she always made the other person feel better. At the funeral, I made sure that I was the one pushing Sarah's wheelchair when she greeted people. Her nurse smiled and gave way to me so I could help Sarah, but she didn't move more than a few steps away from us. Another month after the funeral, I was sitting in Sarah's hospital room doing bills and paperwork when I felt her gaze on me. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up as I put down the invoice I was working on. "What's the matter, Sarah? Do you need something?" I asked, turning to face her. When I turned to look at her, I was surprised. Sarah looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "Michael," she tried to say. I instantly found myself nearby, my arms hugging her. I held her while she cried. I looked at her monitors. Except for a slightly increased heartbeat, she was fine. It was emotional. The hospital psychiatrist said that this could happen. From the moment she woke up, she worried about others rather than herself. "Sarah, everything will be fine. I'm here. You have me. You'll never have to walk alone. You know that," I said, consoling her. She cried even harder and nodded, holding on to me with her good hand, now free of bandages. "I know, Michael. You know. I just miss him." She looked at me pleadingly. "I know, Sarah. Trust me, I know. David was my best friend. I miss him too. When Jennifer did what she did, if it weren't for you and David." She hugged me tighter. "Will it get better?" she said, this in a moment of pain and weakness. "I don't know," I answered quietly. "I want to believe that it will happen. David is gone, but you are here, and we have our children. This must mean something." For a moment, she said nothing, then I felt her relax. "Thank you, Mike. I don't know if I could have held it together without you. You know, you get wiser as you get older." She giggled quietly and nervously. I stroked her hair for a moment, running my hands through her thick, curly mane of red hair, then leaned down and kissed the top of her head. "You're welcome, Sarah. Without David with us and Jennifer in my life, I find that I need a best friend. Are you interested in the job?" I asked, still holding her close. Sarah did the last thing I expected. She reached over and kissed me. "Sarah, I'm sorry. You're my best friend, really my oldest friend, and I love you so much, but I don't know. Damn, we're still mourning David," I said. She sighed, clinging to me. Without thinking, I hugged her as we sat in our hospital bed. "I know, Mike. I understand what you were saying, but I feel something. It never went away after high school," she said. That night, I fell into a restless sleep. I must have tossed and turned for several hours until I finally entered what I somehow immediately knew was a lucid dream. I dreamed of a sports bar that I had never seen before. It was a big place, with TVs everywhere showing various games. There were pool tables and dartboards scattered around, and many people sat and drank, played games, or watched sports. The problem was that they were all out of focus. I knew they were there. I even said hello to a few people I passed by. I even received greetings from vaguely shaped people. I realized that they were smiling at me, but no matter what I tried, they remained indistinct. Besides, it was a pleasant dream, and I was thinking about heading to the bar when I noticed someone who wasn't blurry. He was sitting at a corner table alone. As I approached him, he turned and stood up to greet me. "David," I exclaimed, rushing to hug him, but a moment before I did, I abruptly stopped. He laughed at me. "I'm glad to see you, Mike. Everything is fine. You can hug me." We hugged. Then I pulled him away, looking at him. He looked as good as he did the night before the accident. He caught me examining him and laughed again. "You look good, buddy," I said. "For some reason, I know this is a dream, but I'm so glad to see you." He smiled. Then we sat down at the table. There was a Diet Coke with cranberry juice in front of me. David had a pint of Stella Artois. We slowly sipped our drinks. Ah, he sighed. Okay. He looked at me. How are you, Mike? He asked. I was a little blown away. The dream had become too realistic. Not very good, buddy, I said. Divorce from Jennifer is painful. The girls get angry all the time. I'm trying to support Sarah in her recovery, but it's hard, and I feel like I'm just drowning in it all. David nodded. What about you and Sarah? He asked, raising an eyebrow that I sat back in my chair to think. The dream version of David waited, smiling at me, raising an eyebrow. What about us? I asked. Come on, Mike. We've been friends for more years than I can imagine. You are my closest friend. I know things about you and Sarah that would make anyone blush. I know that you two love each other. I snorted. Of course, David. She is as close to me as you. And Louise. Without you two in my life, she is now my closest friend. I want to see her get better. He sighed. I understand, Mike. But what about the kiss this afternoon? That got you so worried before you fell asleep and came here. You can't say it didn't mean anything, can you? Of course, my subconscious conjured up the image of my best friend to make me feel guilty about it. I looked at my friend. I know it was more than nothing, David. I love her. I always have, I said. He smiled at me. I panicked, mate. Sarah was married to you. Jennifer was married to me. Sure, we dated and even gave each other our first kiss. But David, we're talking about your wife. How can I betray you like that? Michael, he said seriously, I'm dead. His tone was sad but decisive. You two can't betray me. Sarah still has so many years left. She needs someone who will love her and protect her as much as I do. He looked at me for a moment, and it seemed to me that it was the real David, weighing something important to say, and not some figment of my imagination. Sarah loves you too, Michael. Of course, she is hurt by my death, but she desperately clings to the hope that you will not abandon her. She cherishes you in her heart with the same love she has for me. Indeed, she may love you more than me since you have known each other much longer. I didn't know what to say. You know, he leaned towards me as if he was about to tell me a secret. If Sarah and I hadn't met when you two were apart, she would have tracked you down and then forced you to marry her. What? I said, almost choking on my drink. How the hell do you know this? She told me. He smiled. I was outraged at this. How could my dream friend know something I didn't? How could she tell you? You're just some dream of my best friend that my confused mind is using to help me process everything. Sarah never told me anything about this. So how could you know? David laughed. Mike, look around at the walls of this bar. This is not just a dream, and I am not just a figment of your tortured mind, he said. That I replied. Mike, it's true. I'll prove it to you. How? I answered skeptically. He held up 3 fingers. 3 points, he said with a hint of humor in his voice. First of all, he raised his index finger. When you get to the hospital tomorrow, ask Sarah what the last words I said to her were. I snorted. I already know that you were in the car and told each other that you loved each other. David smiled, shaking his head. Well, that's partly true, but after that, when we both realized that I wouldn't make it, I calmed down somehow. I knew that Sarah would make it through, and my last words to her were, love Michael for the rest of your life. I started to answer, but David raised his hand, this time holding up a second finger. Secondly, tomorrow when you're at the hospital, Jennifer will show up. It won't be pretty. David, there's no way. Third, he said, interrupting me, this time raising 3 fingers. My mom is going to bring you and Sarah one of those amazing chicken sandwiches from Tony's Deli on Colorado Boulevard. She'll let you know that she was thinking about you both while she was driving. She will be wearing bright yellow Crocs. I looked at my friend. He laughed at me again. David, how can you know this since this is a dream and you're dead? I asked my friend. He touched the tip of his nose as if it were a secret. Honestly, I'm not allowed to talk, he told me. It's a miracle that I was even allowed to meet with Sarah and you, but I was asked to meet with you, so here I am. I'm happy to spend some more time with you. I didn't believe him, but I had to admit that I was glad to tell him that I was glad to see him too. So if this happens, then what should I do, marry her? I asked David. David laughed again. That's your business, my friend. But if you marry Sarah, you would have my blessing. He took his drink and dragged me out of the booth and over to the pool table. This is something I couldn't say while I was alive, but love her fiercely, Mike. Make me proud to be your best friend, no matter what you choose. It seemed to me that for the next hour we played pool, drank, and at one point, I think sang karaoke songs at the bar. Some other patrons even joined us, although I still can't remember them clearly, except for one other guy. It felt like he was looking after the place or playing an important role here. Whatever it was, while we were drinking and having fun, everything faded away. My last memory was David leaning over me as we said goodbye, hugging me and thanking me for being his friend. I woke up with hot tears streaming down my face. I was sad but also happy. This time, I even managed to say goodbye to him. By the time I had shaved and dressed, I had almost forgotten about the dream. I stopped by the office to confer with my assistant managers. Everyone knew I was spending a lot of time in Sarah's hospital room and also completing the move over the next few weeks. My assistant manager, Janet, had prepared all my paperwork for today and accepted the ones I had worked on yesterday. She then led me into a conference room where I worked with my managers for an hour before heading to the hospital. It was around lunchtime when I arrived. Sarah smiled as I walked into the room. Doctors told her that although she still had a long way to go, she would be able to return home in a few weeks. She complained that she had been tired of the hospital room for several days, and although they managed to move her to a room with a window overlooking the Rose Bowl, she wanted to get out of these four walls. I was happy for her. If she could get settled at home, it would help her a lot. We were talking about how she would fall asleep in her own bed when David's mom, Patricia, came in. I didn't know Patricia as well as Sarah's mother, Margaret. We were acquaintances who respected each other. She smiled as she entered the room. "Sarah," she said in a warm, friendly tone, "you look so much better today. And Michael looks so handsome and caring. You are so kind to care so much about Sarah. I know David would be so proud of you." She said this while leaning down to kiss Sarah. As she did this, I noticed a pair of bright yellow Crocs on her feet. I froze. Sarah noticed the blood drain from my face. "Mike, what's wrong?" Both Sarah and her mother-in-law looked where I was staring, at Patricia's feet. "Is there something wrong with my Crocs?" Patricia asked with a frown. "I bought them yesterday as a special order. I thought they were cheerful." "No, sorry, Patricia," I replied. "Sorry, I had a dream last night, and your shoes just reminded me of it. That's all," I said, trying to push the thought away. Sarah continued to stare at me for a minute while Patricia fussed around. "Oh, before I forget, I bought you both lunch at that amazing Tony's Deli on Colorado. They have the most amazing chicken sandwiches," she said animatedly and excitedly, telling us how for just $8, they make them with everything you can fit between two pieces of sourdough bread. When Patricia said the words, chicken sandwiches, I repeated the words with her as I sat down. "Mike, are you okay?" Sarah asked worriedly. I looked at Sarah, then at Patricia, at the sandwiches in her hand as she unwrapped them for us, and finally at her yellow Crocs. It was a dream, I told myself. Just a weird dream. I tried to convince myself that it was a coincidence. I tried to justify myself by telling both ladies that I was just tired. Patricia didn't know me well enough to object, but Sarah gave me a look that said we'd talk about this later. So we ate our sandwiches, and Patricia was right. They were amazing. Imagine layer upon layer of turkey, chicken salad, tomatoes, cheese, sprouts, avocado, special sauce, and something that tasted like honey mustard, sandwiched between two pieces of very soft yet hearty sourdough bread. And you have a lunch that will make your taste buds sing. After lunch, we sat and chatted about nothing, mostly about the weather and how we were going to get Sarah home. I was no longer so worried and began to relax, resting in the afternoon calm, when Jennifer entered the room. Jennifer was wearing jeans and a designer blouse with her hair tied up in a perfect bun. I had to admit she looked good, perhaps a little thinner than the last time I saw her, but good nonetheless. She was holding a bouquet of expensive flowers and a wrapped gift, walking as if she was supposed to be there. She walked as if the last few months had never happened. "Oh, Sarah, I'm so glad to see you. You look good, all things considered," Jennifer said. She looked around the room, then noticed me, and suddenly her whole demeanor changed dramatically. Michael, she growled. What are you doing here? It's your fault that Sarah is here and David is dead. You have no right to be here. Once I'm done divorcing you, I'll make sure that Sarah is taken care of and that she never has to see your ugly face again. I stood up, storm clouds gathering inside me. Get out, said a quiet voice. Everyone turned to the bed where Sarah was looking at Jennifer with sadness in her eyes. Sarah, it's okay. I'll kick Michael out of here, Jennifer said. No, he will stay, and you go, Sarah replied, tears beginning to flow slowly down her face. That I took a step towards Jennifer. Jennifer, you need to go. Listen to me this time. You need to leave. Jennifer had a seizure of rage. She threw the gift on the floor, and we heard something shatter inside. The flowers were then thrown at the wall. I took 2 steps, standing between Jennifer and Sarah's hospital bed. Patricia stood stunned in the background. Jennifer launched into a tirade. Why, Michael? What the hell did you tell her? She knows you're to blame for David's death, doesn't she? Why the hell does she think I have anything to do with her accident or with you? You are the one who needs to go. I'll look after Sarah. I'll stay with her to make sure she's okay now that she's lost her husband. She then looked at Sarah's stump where her left arm used to be. And I'll be happy to make sure she's taken care of. I growled. What the hell makes you think you can come here after over 2 months without ever asking anything about her and think you have any right to talk to Sarah? Mike, Sarah said from the bed. I pointed to the bed behind me. Sarah lost her husband. I lost my best friend. The kids and I have been here every day since the accident. Where have you been? I started to rattle off my grievances when Sarah's voice sounded again, more insistent. Michael, I continued to advance. I know why you are here. You lost your job, your parents are tired of your drama in their spare bedroom, your daughters don't want to talk to you. So you thought you'd manipulate Sarah, trying to live off her income until she got tired of your crap. Michael, Sarah's voice sounded more insistent the 3rd time that I turned to Sarah, angry at being interrupted, and saw the pleading look on my best friend's face. My anger instantly melted. Sorry, I muttered. It's all right, Sarah answered. She turned her head to look directly at Jennifer. Jennifer, you need to leave. Considering the way you treated Michael, not to mention the little tantrum you just threw, this shows that you are not my friend. Don't you dare use David's death as a reason to blame Michael. You have become a vile, disgusting creature. I'm ashamed to call you my friend, let alone trust you. Jennifer began to protest, but Sarah raised her stump. Leave it, Jennifer. You can't stay here. I'm no longer your friend, and you're not welcome here. Do I need to call security to escort you out? Sarah asked. That MY's soon-to-be ex-wife pleaded. This is unfair. Nobody is. No, Jennifer, Sarah interrupted, anger rising in her voice. What's not fair is that my husband is dead, and I'm crippled for life because you decided to cheat on your husband, who is one of my closest friends. The room fell silent. The only sounds came from the hospital corridor. No one said anything. Then a frown appeared on Jennifer's face, which I had come to associate with her denial of everything around her and life in general. She looked from Sarah to me, back to Sarah, and finally back to Sarah one last time. Every time she looked, a whole range of emotions was reflected on her face, but the frown remained. When she looked at Sarah one last time, the venom erupted. Well, screw you then, Sarah. I see how this happens. Your husband's body hasn't even cooled down in the grave, and you're already sleeping with my husband. You hypocrite. She didn't finish as I grabbed Jennifer's arm and led her out of the room. I knew that security would be nearby. I turned to my wayward wife. Jennifer, I don't know what the hell is wrong with you. I don't know what caused you to go from being a loving wife and caring friend to being an absolute nightmare. But it will stop right now, I told her decisively. Jennifer, thank God, shut up and pulled back. Michael, she said. No, Jennifer, I've had enough. You have severed every relationship around you, from your daughters to your friends to me. Nobody, and I really mean nobody, wants you within 100 meters of us. You've turned into a narcissistic parasite who doesn't seem to care about those around you. The doors opened, and 2 burly guards came out. They noticed Jennifer and me. Are you okay, Mr. Davis? One asked. Peter, the larger of the 2 guards, added. I let her go with a wave of my hand. It's okay, Peter. Jennifer just got a little emotional and upset when she saw Sarah in the hospital bed. However, she was just about to leave, weren't you, Jennifer? Jennifer looked at me, then at the guards, resigned. Sure. See you later, Michael, she said. I shook my head. We watched as Jennifer left, and the guards escorted me back to Sarah's room, where Patricia and Sarah were whispering. After making sure Sarah was okay, the security left. The cleaning staff came in to tidy up the mess with the gift. 20 minutes later, Patricia came out too, giving me a big hug. Thanks, Michael. You're looking after her now. She needs you. Patricia whispered to me, hugging me before calling herself an elevator. Are you okay? I asked Sarah, sitting down on her bed. Now it was just the two of us. I grabbed her right hand, holding it. Isn't that what I should be asking you? She snorted. I shrugged. It was a strange day, but it wasn't until the run-in with Jennifer that I felt. I paused. I don't know, uncomfortable. But no, I think it all started with a dream last night. Sarah's head jerked to look at me. A dream? She asked. I nodded. Yes, I couldn't sleep last night when I got home. I blushed. I think she realized that our kiss was partly to blame. Anyway, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, but when I finally fell asleep, I had a dream about David in a bar. Sarah nodded, almost understanding. It was strange. It's like I knew it was a dream. It was a big sports bar. There were other people there, but it was like they were out of focus. Everyone was out of focus. Well, with the exception of David and some other guy I can't remember. David was very clear. We talked. He told me what would happen today, so I knew it was more than a dream. Patricia's Crocs, the sandwiches, Jennifer's appearance. David said it would all happen. I looked back at Sarah. Her eyes told me that she believed me. There was one more thing, wasn't there? She asked timidly. I nodded. How did you know? I looked at her. A tear rolled down her cheek, and she squeezed my hand. I didn't want to ask the question, both fearing and hoping for the answer. What did he say? I whispered quietly. Love Michael for the rest of your life, Sarah said quietly but persistently, looking into my eyes. I took a deep breath. Sarah? I asked. She nodded. Another tear joined the first, slowly rolling down her cheek. Those were the last words David said to me before we both lost consciousness in the car accident. They were the last words he spoke to me in this life. My tears joined hers. How did you know? I sobbed quietly, almost in a whisper. When you told me about David in the bar, he also met me there last night, telling me how brave I was, but that I would need to let him go and love you the way I always have. He told me that you wouldn't be able to ask this question when the time came, but that I must tell you our last words. With that, we fell into each other's arms. I hugged Sarah in the fading afternoon light, and we cried. As we cried, we spoke quietly about the man we knew, a friend, a lover, a husband, and a father. We mourned our shared loss together, growing even closer in our grief. As evening fell, the hospital noises continued around us. Sarah made room for me on the small hospital bed, and we continued to hold each other as best we could, both of us suddenly tired. Finally, when we fell asleep, I kissed the top of her head, whispering, I love you. In response, Sarah snorted slightly as she replied, I love you too, Mike. After that day, we gradually felt better. The children, Emma, Sophie, and Tyler, found us the next day huddled together on the bed under the hospital blanket that the nurse must have thrown over us during the night. Emma clapped her hands when we woke up. Finally, she exclaimed, causing everyone to laugh. We spent the morning talking about what happened yesterday, including Jennifer, but omitting the dream with David. Later that week, everyone agreed that when Sarah was discharged, she would not go home, but would move in with Emma and me. Our new location in Burbank was closer to the hospital, and we agreed that Sophie and Tyler would stay with Sarah. They would rent out the other 2 rooms to UCLA students with Sarah and my approval, of course. By the time Sarah was discharged, her casts had been removed, and she was now using a series of flexible bandages that could be removed as needed to allow the wounds to continue to heal. Bringing her home was one of the happiest days we'd all had in years. To be honest, I was also a little excited when my new girlfriend moved in with me. The kids had already moved a lot of Sarah's clothes and personal belongings into the new house. They even showed some independence by placing them in the master bedroom with my things rather than in the guest room as we had discussed. But to be honest, I didn't mind the audacity of this move. When we got home, we spent a few hours talking with the kids. After dinner, Sophie and Tyler headed back to Sarah's old house. Emma, under a plausible pretext, went to visit a friend for a few hours, leaving Sarah and me alone for the first time all day. For the first time since we turned 18, Sarah appeared before me in the evening. We were awakened by the smell of breakfast coming from behind the door. A few moments later, Sophie waltzed into the room, holding her hand in front of her face. "Cover yourselves, you two. I'm coming in," she said, smiling and lowering her hand when she saw that we were both covered with a sheet. "Sleep well?" she asked. "Amazing, honey," Sarah replied sleepily. "It's so nice to sleep in a normal bed again." She looked at me and added, "Sleep next to the one you love." Breakfast is ready. Emma and Tyler are currently setting the table, so I was tasked with coming to see if you needed any help getting ready, since we were expecting you both to be undressed, she chuckled. "No, it's okay, honey. Sarah and I will get dressed, and in a couple of minutes, I'll help her down. Be a good girl and close the door when you leave," I said. "Yes, Dad." She gave a playful salute as she walked out, closing the door and laughing. They were all laughing when we came down about 10 minutes later. The rest of the morning went smoothly. Our new family felt good. It seemed like it always had, and I suppose in some ways it had. We were always in each other's lives. There was a relaxed family atmosphere where we were just being ourselves. A few weeks later, the divorce between Jennifer and me became final, and our assets were officially divided. Thanks to the prenuptial agreement, Jennifer received very little. She didn't touch my business, which was now worth quite a lot. I kept the money from the sale of our original house in Alhambra, and although I shouldn't have done it, I gave her a check for $90,000, which was just under half of our total savings. Why did I do this if, according to the marriage contract, I would have to give her only half of this amount? Well, it was for two reasons. Firstly, Jennifer's actions destroyed any relationship we had. I wanted to give her enough money so she could move out of her parents' house and start a life somewhere else. I heard she was offered a job in San Francisco, which would mean we wouldn't have to see her anymore. I hoped that giving her this money would encourage her to take this step. Besides, my settlement with Pacific Foods Distribution gave me an order of magnitude more than I gave her, so I wasn't suffering financially. Speaking of Brandon, it looks like he was in a little trouble. He couldn't get a job and somehow ended up doing retail work at a gas station in Van Nuys. In my opinion, this could not have happened to a nicer guy. 6 months passed, and Sarah and I were married. She looked beautiful in her wedding dress, with a bouquet tied to her remaining arm. She was self-conscious about the way she looked, going through several bouts of depression, but since the kids and I were always there, it never lasted long. Sarah also changed paths after getting her counseling psychology degree. She got busy counseling those who, like her, have lost limbs. 2 years after we got married, the California governor's office awarded her the Hero of the Year award for her contribution to helping disabled people in need. In her speech, she thanked her family and friends and then called me on stage, citing me as the main reason for her success because I was there for her as she recovered from her accident. It was a tense time. Both Sarah and I gave several media interviews. We even appeared on morning shows to talk about the physical and mental challenges of people with disabilities. My wife was a beauty, and despite her handicap, she never allowed anyone to see her worry or cry during the times when she was down. She knew I was there for her to help her get back up. The love that Sarah and I had for each other grew every day. Even though we had our differences, we always forgave each other and never went to bed angry. We didn't see Jennifer for about 3 years until Sophie and Tyler's wedding. They graduated with honors from UCLA in their chosen fields, had good jobs, but wanted to start a family while they were young. Sophie didn't want to invite her mother. In 3 years, they had spoken twice. Both times the conversations were laconic and unfriendly. But the only reason I persuaded her to invite Jennifer was that she had given birth to Sophie and should be able to celebrate the occasion. In the end, Sophie relented, but asked that Jennifer be seated at one of the tables with the regular guests rather than the family table. I shrugged. I didn't care where my ex-wife sat as long as it wasn't next to Sarah and me. I just wanted to make sure that Sophie didn't look back in the years to come, wishing her mother had at least attended her wedding. In the end, a compromise was found. Jennifer ended up sitting with her elderly parents, who were happy to sit at a couple of tables in the back to keep the peace with their granddaughter and her new husband. As is always the case with ex-wives at weddings, I was at the bar getting myself a Jack and Coke when Jennifer came up to me and leaned her elbows on the counter next to me. She ordered a glass of Chardonnay, then turned and looked at me. "I never said I was sorry, did I?" she asked directly, but it was more of a statement than a question. "No," I said, turning around and looking at the crowd. Sarah, Emma, and Sophie were on the other side of the room, laughing at something. I smiled but then added, "I never thought you'd do this." Jennifer sighed. "You're right. I was a complete mess back then. A complete and utter mess, completely of my own making," she said. "Yes," I replied, pronouncing the last syllable and then taking a sip of my drink. Sarah looked at me, smiled, then frowned when she saw Jennifer next to me. I shook my head slightly, and she nodded, realizing there was no problem. "I saw you both at the Hero Awards and have followed what you've both achieved since then," Jennifer said sadly. She watched my wife, her ex-friend, laugh with our daughters, knowing that she would never be able to enjoy a relationship like that with either of her daughters again. "They hate me, don't they?" Jennifer asked, looking at them, then at me, then down into her glass of wine. "Hate is too strong a word," I said after a moment of reflection. I chuckled. "No, actually, that's the right word for what they think about you. But time passes, and the fire subsides. Who knows? Maybe in 10 years, the girls will answer your phone call." I felt rather than saw Jennifer's shoulders slump. Then she turned to me. "What about you, Michael? Do you hate me?" asked my ex-wife. I shrugged. "I hate what you did. I despise it. I abhor it. Choose for yourself." I heard the band begin to tune their instruments in the background. I smiled to myself, knowing that soon I would be dancing with my daughter. "But you convinced Sophie to invite me tonight. So if you hate me so much, why?" she asked. I turned to look at Jennifer for the first time that evening. She was an empty woman compared to the person I knew before. Her cheeks were sunken as if she hadn't eaten well, and her skin was sallow. There was a haunted look in her eyes, and it looked like her hair had not only turned gray or had bad dye, but her hairline had receded a little. Overall, I knew that this woman I once loved was broken. I studied her for a moment longer before answering. "Jennifer, no mother should miss her daughter's wedding, but I didn't invite you here to make you feel better. I invited you to make sure our daughter has a clear conscience when she gets married." I paused, then raised my glass to the passing couple. "That's all. And if I never have to see you again, I'll consider myself lucky." With that, I left, joining my family for the wedding dance. I actually heard a sob and someone saying, "I'm so sorry." Unfortunately for her, the way she behaved did not inspire any sympathy that we danced, ate, joked, and laughed for the rest of the night, and I never saw Jennifer again. We heard from her parents that Jennifer died a few years later. This was right after Emma had just gotten engaged to her doctor. Yes, surprise, I didn't expect this either, but at Emma's engagement party, we learned that Jennifer had developed liver disease and died in her hospital bed with only her parents by her side. She didn't want anyone to tell us anything. She was very bitter until the end. As for Sarah and me, we were honest with each other. When our grandchildren were born, we doted on them together. We traveled the world, seeing the sights and wonders. We made love in different countries, spoiled our grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren. They knew that Sarah and I were in love with each other, and that love had not faded at all over the years. Some older people who are still up to some frisky fun have just proven it.